John chapter 15. We will be in this chapter primarily this morning, but we'll begin reading in verse 1. It reads, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now you are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. No more can ye, except you abide in me. I am the vine, ye are the branches. He that abideth in me, and I in him, the same bringeth forth much fruit. For without me you can do nothing. If a man abide not in me, he is cast forth as a branch, and is withered. And men gather them, and cast them into the fire, and they are burned. If you abide in me, and my words abide in you, ye shall ask what you will, and it shall be done unto you. Herein is my Father glorified, that you bear much fruit, for ye shall be my disciples. You may be seated. We open up here, John chapter 15, these first 8 verses, coming off of what we looked at last week in John chapter 14. And I would remind you that as Jesus is talking here, they have already partaken of that Last Supper, that final Passover. Jesus is currently being sold by Judas. Judas has gone off to the religious authorities to tell them where they might find Christ. Christ knows that his hour of trial is his hour of questioning, of beatings, of tribulation, culminating in his crucifixion, that it is going to happen very shortly. And so he is leaving his apostles, he's leaving that small church there with him, leaving them these final words of comfort, but also these final charges. He's telling them the things that they're going to need to know as they continue on, as they continue the work that Christ started in them and by them in the world. I want you to ponder for a moment, put yourself in this situation as you're having you know that you're going to die soon, and you're having what you know is going to be the last conversation that you will have with maybe your close friends or with your family. What is it that you would tell them? What is it that you would want to pass on to them, that you would want them to hold on to? Or put yourself in the other side of the equation. Someone is giving you their last the last things that they'll ever say on this during their time with you. The last conversation that you'll ever get to have with them. And you're listening to them. How precious would these words be to you? How precious would this conversation be to you, knowing that within a few hours this person is going to die? Right? This is on the mind of Christ. This is on the mind of his apostles. And so as we open up here in chapter 15, Christ is telling them that he is the true vine. He is what all fruit comes from. Being an agricultural society, they would have been familiar with the growing of grapes, with the growing of figs, with the growing of fruits, knowing that there are some plants that the fruit that they grow, the fruit that they produce, if they're wild plants, it's usually not all that good. I understand that you have wild gourds over here. I didn't have those back home, but Brother Ed tells me that you can cut into those and you can take a big old scoop out of them, and well, you'll spit it out just about as quick as it goes into your mouth. They're just not that good. They're real bitter. Apples, I understand, very much the same thing. They don't reproduce true to kind. If you try and grow an apple from a seed, an apple tree from a seed, you don't know what kind of fruit that new tree is going to bear. There is a small chance it'll be good, but there's an even better chance that it's not going to be good for anything. You have to selectively breed these things to pull out the traits that you want. Well, Christ, He is the true vine. All fruit that comes from Him, all fruit that comes out of Him is good fruit. We read over in Galatians 5. We'll just go ahead and turn there. Galatians 5, in a passage that I am sure that you are familiar with. We'll start in verse 16. Galatians 5 and verse 16, it says, "This I say then, walk in the Spirit, and you shall not fulfill the lust of the flesh. For the flesh lusteth against the Spirit, and the Spirit against the flesh, and these are contrary the one to the other, so that you cannot do the things that you would. But if ye be led of the Spirit, you are not under the law. Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulations, wrath, strife, seditions, heresies, envyings, murders, drunkenness, revelings, and such like, the which I tell you before, as I have also told you in time past, that they which do such things shall not inherit the kingdom of God. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, gentleness, goodness, faith, meekness, temperance. Against such there is no law. And they that are Christ's have crucified the flesh with the afflictions and lusts. If we live in the Spirit, let us also walk in the Spirit. Let us not be desirous of vainglory, provoking one another, envying one another." We see it laid out here very clearly, the difference between where our flesh will lead us, the things that come of our flesh. We don't have to think very hard of times in our life when these things were made manifest in our lives, do we? We all can look back on times when we were weaker in the Spirit, when we were weaker in this walk, and we saw these things come out in our lives. Right? These are things that we do naturally. This is sin inside us that causes us to do these things. You know, there's the phrase, the devil made me do it. I don't like that phrase, because the devil really didn't make us do anything. And the devil made me do it is only an excuse for people who don't realize the strength of wickedness in this flesh, the strength of sin in this flesh, and our own weakness. The devil, all he can do is present opportunity. All he can do is accuse us. But we're the ones that make the decision day after day after day what it is that we're going to do. If we're going to make these works of the flesh manifest in our lives, or if we're going to push them aside. The flip side of that, the fruit of the Spirit, things that we cannot do of ourselves, things that do not come naturally to us. Perhaps in part, perhaps a shadow of these things. We can have a shadow of these things, but to find the fullness of the fruit of the Spirit, these are things that only come once we know Christ. Once we have dedicated our lives to Him. I think we are in a world today which does not recognize fully what it means to have Christ. There are a lot of people who will say that they have Christ who do not have Him. And you say, well, Pastor, how can you be so sure? I don't think that there's a single person who has had a true experience with Christ who did not walk away from that completely changed. The power of Christ is such that even if you don't follow after Him afterwards, which doesn't make sense to me, right? How can you experience Christ and not want Him for your life, not want His will for your life? You can't come away from that experience with Him and not have experienced some change, not have become something different than what you are. Because you experience life. You think about all the people who experienced Christ while he was here on earth during that 3.5 years of his ministry, who experienced the healings, who experienced the miracles, who heard his teachings. There were a lot that rejected him, yeah. Not a single one of them wasn't touched in such a way that they won't be held accountable for it in eternity. Right? Even that alone is demonstrative that there is a change that comes with experiencing Christ. But to put the focus back on our opening reading here, Christ isn't giving these sayings, he's not giving these words to someone who experienced him for a brief moment and then walked away. He's giving these words to the men who dedicated their lives to him, who dedicated their every moment to following after him. And he says, I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away, and every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. There is an expectation on our lives that as we follow after Christ, as we have yoked ourselves under his yoke, right? Matthew 11, come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest into your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. For everyone who is joined in that yoke, there is the expectation that we bear fruit. That we don't just take this thing that we have and hide it. Right, Brother Ed? A city that is set on a hill cannot be hid. You wouldn't hide a candle under a bushel. And for the ones who do not bear fruit, you're purged. How many times have we seen that in our lives? You don't have to be in church but a few years sometimes to experience this. You see someone who comes and they have an experience with God, and they come to church for a while, but they're not bearing fruit. And God prunes them from the assembly. They leave. They're taken out because they're drawing energy and they're not giving anything in return. They're not being fruitful. How many times have we looked at a trial in our own lives through the lens of not of well, this is a really hard thing and I can't wait for it to get over with, but God's pruning me, so I'll bear more fruit. There's some trees outside, some fruit trees that really need to be pruned. Right? And it is something that we know from experience. When you prune a fruit tree, when you cut off the branches that aren't producing, when you cut off the branches that are sticking straight up, going way up high where you can't reach, you know, the next year after you prune that tree, that new growth, as it grows back branches, it produces more. It produces better fruit. God has the same intention with us. As he works on us, as he prunes away the things that in our lives that aren't producing the fruit, you know, it hurts. I'm sure it hurts the tree to have those branches cut off. Sometimes you have to lop off a pretty big branch. But God knows what he's doing, doesn't he? Find over in Isaiah chapter 5, God is comparing Israel to a vineyard. In verse 4 he says, what could have been done more to my vineyard that I have not done in it? Wherefore when I looked that it should bring forth grapes, brought it forth wild grapes? In this passage, God is proclaiming his judgment against Israel because the expectation for all that he had done for them was that they would produce good grapes. That they would be a vineyard that he could could go into, that he could look upon, and he could enjoy the fruit of his labor. Because all the work that he did in them. And they rejected that labor. They rejected everything that he did. And they still brought forth wild grapes, and it continues on. God continues on in that passage. Isaiah writes that he'll break open the gates. He'll break down the walls. He'll let the vineyard be trampled. He'll let the vineyard be burned. If it's not producing the fruit that he worked so hard to get it to produce, it's a forsaken vineyard. Because it forsook him first. We have to be mindful as we go through this life. What fruit are we bearing? What are we giving back to God for his efforts in our own lives? It is right for the dresser of the vineyard, for the master of the vineyard, to expect fruit, to expect a return. You know, growing up, we had an apple orchard, a bunch of trees, and there were days, even when the fruit wasn't ripe, being able to go into that orchard and to just enjoy the shade of the trees, to enjoy the atmosphere that they brought, it was pleasurable. It was enjoyable. Christ finds, I think, the same pleasure, the same joy. When he goes into his vineyard and he knows that it's bearing forth good fruit. You know, when he comes here and he meets with us, as we believe that he does, I think he takes great pleasure in being here with us. At least I hope he does. You know, if we're letting things into our lives, if we're bringing things into this assembly that ought not to be here, it's not just affecting us. No, it's affecting Christ. If there's thorns in the vineyard, it's going to bring displeasure. How mindful ought we to be what we bring into the assembly when we know that Christ comes here to enjoy fellowship with us. Let's continue reading over in John 15. My hope was to make it through the entire chapter. I don't know that we will, but we'll do what we can. Picking back up in verse 9, as the Father hath loved me, so I have loved you. Continue you in my love. If you keep my commandments, ye shall abide in my love, even as I have kept my Father's commandments, and abide in his love. These things have I spoken unto you, that my joy might remain in you, and that your joy may be full. This is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. You know, in this entire section, from John chapter 13 to the end of John chapter 15, Jesus commands his apostles that they love one another 4 times. Again and again and again, he brings this up. Love one another as I have loved you. Jesus makes it a condition of our love for him that we obey his commandments, that we are obedient to him. Do we love Christ? To say that we love Christ is to say that we're being obedient to him. To say that we love Christ is we are actively being disobedient to him. It's a lie. There's a lot more to it when God says, "Thou shalt not take my name in vain." We think of all the occasions that people use the name of God, the name of Christ as an exclamation. They use it synonymous with other cursings. But you know, there's a lot more to taking the Lord's name in vain than just using it to declare your displeasure or to emphasize a point. If we say that we're followers of God and we are not, we are taking the Lord's name in vain. We are attributing a relationship and a power that comes with following after God, with being His people. We're lying about that. We are being dishonest about that to make ourselves look better. It's a commandment to Israel. It is one of the ten commandments upon which God's law was built. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain, to paraphrase. It's there because it was a reminder to Israel. It is a reminder to us that whatever we do bearing the name of God. Israel as a nation, they were representing God here on this earth. The nations were to look to Israel to see what it meant to be God's people. The people around us are to look to us to see what it means to be God's people. Are we honest in the picture that we show? Are we honest in our portrayal of what it means to be a follower of Christ? What it means to be His people? Are we honest to that? Brothers and sisters, if we're not, we are taking His name in vain. He has put His mark on us. He has put His name on us as a people. That ought to mean something to us. As we obey God, as we endeavor to obey Him, we have to be mindful that one of those commandments and obedience is that we love one another. And not that just that we say, oh, I love you. Not just that we put on a friendly face toward one another. He says in verse 12, as I have loved you. And then he follows that up with greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. Christ laid down His life for His apostles, for His church, for His friends. He was presented that example to us. And to follow that up, verse 14, you are my friends if you do whatsoever I command you. Henceforth I call you not servants, for the servant knoweth not what his Lord doeth, but I have called you friends. For all things that I have heard of my Father, I have made known unto you. That word servant, our King James uses servant. Other translations, in fact the Greek, uses a word which I think has a little bit more impact for us. Uses the word slave. We understand what it means to be a slave. Oh, I don't think we understand what it means to be a slave. Personal experience, but we understand the concept. Someone whose life is entirely devoted, entirely dedicated to service of their master. You know, in that relationship, the slave is expected to give their life for the master. The master does not do the same for the slave. And Christ says, I'm not calling you servants. You are not slaves. Christ laid down His life for His friends. He laid down His life for us. We could spend a lot of time meditating on what that means, what it means to be a friend of Christ. What does it mean for our relationship with one another? I think of the scene where Christ washed his apostles' feet. the master washing the feet of his servants. God washing the feet of his friends. Bowing himself down and doing what was considered to be a filthy job out of love for his friends. And he says, love one another as I have loved you. How willing are we to demonstrate our love for one another? What lengths are we willing to go to in that love? I think that we can all look at the relationships that we have with one another, and we can realize just how short we fall. I hope that we're never called upon to give our lives for one another. But it may happen. It may. I recall an account. I can't remember where it was written down, or even when it happened, but it may be strictly anecdotal. I don't know. There's a story I heard one time of a church that they were under severe persecution to the point where these people would come in and they would kill the pastors of the churches. And so the day comes when this church found themselves interrupted by this group who was killing pastors, and they came in and said, "Who's the pastor here?" And all the men stood up. Right? They were all willing to give their lives for one another, and as I recall, they were all killed for it. Do we have that same love bond between one another, to where our own death is preferable to seeing someone else perish? Loving one another to the death. You know, that's what Christ did for us. 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 22 says it well, seeing that you have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit unto unfeigned love of the brethren, love one another with a pure heart fervently. Do we love one another fervently? That's a fun word. I like that word. Let's continue to... continuing to move on back in John chapter 13, just a page back from where we are. Verse 34 and 35 says, "A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another as I have loved you, that you also love one another. By this shall all men know that you are my disciples, if you have love one to another." It's one thing for this to be said to mixed congregations of Jews, of Gentiles, people who didn't really get along. This is earlier on in the same scene that we're reading. This is Christ talking to his apostles. There are times when it's going to be hard to love one another. There are times when our personalities are going to clash. But you know, there are people watching. There are people always watching. And the people out there, they look in, and if they see love for one another, that's one very physical expression of the love of Christ that's within us. Knowing that we are people, knowing that we each have our own personalities, knowing that we each have our own ways of thinking, ways of doing things, knowing that we can sometimes be abrasive. We don't let that get in the way of our love for one another. We'll continue reading here. I think we might have to fast track the rest of the chapter here. I think we'll make it. let's see, verse 16, you have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you, that you should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever you shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. And this isn't talking about what those of the Calvinist persuasion will tell you of predestination. Christ is telling them that, out of all the hosts of gods, it's not like you guys came together and you just said, oh, we'll follow him, we'll follow that one. No, I've chosen you, and I have appointed you. I've chosen you, and I have appointed you for the purpose that you should go and bring forth fruit. Not only just bring forth fruit, but it's going to be a fruit that remains. It's going to be a fruit that glorifies God. Right? Our fruits that we should be producing, our fruits that we should be cultivating, if we're doing it right, we're producing this fruit in other people's lives. We are demonstrating the love of Christ. We are demonstrating the power of Christ in the lives of those around us in such a way that, one, it's undeniable, and two, it's not going to go anywhere. It's one thing to have a passing conversation with someone and say, well, Christ loves you. But if we just throw that out there and we leave it there, it's not going to do very much, is it? It's it might take root. It might produce some fruit. But, there's a really good chance that it's just going to kind of fly onto the wall and fall off. We're meant to be ingrained in the lives of those around us. This fruit that we produce, it's not through casual conversations. It's not through chance opportunities. It's through dedicated service. It's through dedicated times that we determine within ourselves. I'm going to talk to these people about Christ. I am going to make opportunities to witness to this person, to tell them what Christ has done for me, to tell them what Christ can do for them. I'm going to follow up with this. I'm not just going to have one conversation and call it good for life. I'm going to keep on them. When you're growing something, you can't just put the seed in the ground and walk away. It's never going to produce anything. You have to take the time to water it. You have to take the time to weed it. You have to care for it. Only then do you see that it produces fruit. And of course, we temper that with knowing that we can plant and we can water, but it's God who gives the increase. But if we don't dedicate ourselves to the care of these seeds that we plant, we're wasting our efforts. We can broadcast seed, but our call as servants of God isn't just to make sure the seeds get planted. Our call is to make sure that they've got every opportunity to germinate. And then we let God give the increase on it. Then we let God be control in how that plant fruits. But I think that our modern look at evangelism is really very shallow. It's one thing to say, well, Christ loves you and say this prayer and you'll be saved. It's an entirely different thing to take them under our wing as servants of God and to disciple them. That's a long process, isn't it? But someone took the time to invest in our lives in that way. Someone loved us enough to disciple us, to raise us up in understanding of the Word, to bear with us through our faults, through our failures, to be patient and loving enough that when we were struggling ourselves, when we weren't sure if this is what we wanted ourselves, to not fail in praying for us and encouraging us along. This is the same dedication that we owe to other people. This is the call, the charge that we're given in Matthew 28. When Jesus says, all power is given unto me in heaven and in earth, I tell you therefore, go and do these things. Christ has chosen us to do that. Is it a personal charge? Have we made it a personal charge? Or are we of the mindset that we don't really have an accountability to the message that we bear? That's the pastor's job. Get them to church, let them hear the word in church, and that's all my duty is. So I think the scriptures lay out a different charge entirely. You are the front lines in those people's lives. You are that person's opportunity to hear the gospel. You are that person's lifeline. Just don't forget also that they are dying, and they are dying fast. And their only hope for life is the gospel that you bring them. We'll speed it up a little bit. The next few verses, Christ tells them, well, they can really be summarized with, if the world hates you, you know that it hated me before it hated you. We lose perspective on this life sometimes, I think. We get comfortable. We develop an aversion from putting ourselves in situations that might be uncomfortable. Witnessing to friends, witnessing to family members, to people that we know don't want to hear these words. Verse 20, remember the word that I said unto you, the servant is not greater than his Lord. If they have persecuted me, they will also persecute you. If they have kept my saying, they will keep yours also. How many of us, for our faith and for the word that we declare, have suffered true persecution? You know, it's really, really hard to think that we will be willing to give our lives for the word of the Lord, to give our lives for our faith when we're not even willing to have uncomfortable conversations with the people in our lives. How can we ever hope to die for a faith that we've barely even lived for? The next few verses, Christ talks about the accountability that came with him preaching the word, fulfilling the things that were written in the law. You know, when the Pharisees, before Christ came, they thought they were doing right. And Christ came and showed to them that they were not, showed to them the love that they were missing, the compassion that they were missing, showed them how they missed the entire point of the law that they held so tightly to, that they built their lives around. There are a lot of people in this life who think that they are doing the right thing. The message of Christ makes them accountable. There are people that we will run into in this life who are just sure that they have the right of it, that they can be a good person, that they can, well, by their own definition, a good person, that they can get away with anything else. The message of Christ, the message that we bear to them, the message which holds them accountable is that all men have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And that Christ came and He died for our sin, that we might have hope in eternity, that we might have eternal life. Are we holding them accountable? Because it's one thing to just say, oh yeah, okay, you just believe that, go on believing that. It's another thing to say, no, you're wrong about that. There's this man Christ, and he has an expectation for how you live this life. And it's hard. But we must remember that it's their eternities that are at stake. That to let them go on in that foolish thinking, let them go on without at least trying to change their minds, without at least trying to demonstrate to them the things that Christ has to say, we are dooming them to an eternity of damnation. And we will be judged for those opportunities that we have passed by. I don't want to dwell on that because we're already running a little bit late. Verse 26, but when the Comforter is come, whom I will send unto you from the Father, even the Spirit of truth, which proceedeth from the Father, He shall testify of me, and you also shall bear witness, because you have been with me from the beginning. All of that to say that we, as God's people, we have the Comforter, we have the Holy Spirit. We have the authority to take this gospel, to take this book which we have been given, and to preach it and to proclaim it. We have the power which comes from Christ. We have the power which comes from Him to bring life from death. And we bear witness not because we are so special, but because we have experienced Him ourselves. Those apostles, they experienced Him. They were, Jesus says, you have been with me from the beginning. They were the ones who were there from the beginning of His ministry, and they bore witness of it because they had a personal relationship, a personal experience with Christ. And as we close this morning, I ask, are we taking these personal experiences that we have with Christ, and are we using these as our witness to those around us? Because that is our witness to those around us. This experience that we have, this testimony that we have. It's sometimes hard to remember the scriptures that we want to quote, but we can take our life experiences and we can say, I know what you're struggling with. Let me tell you about what Christ did for me. That's all I really have for you this morning. We kind of rushed through the end of the chapter there. That is what it means to be a follower of Christ. What it means to be His servant. The expectation is not that we idle by, not that we hide our treasures, but that we bear fruit. And we demonstrate our love for Christ and our love for one another. I'll invite you to stand.